All right, we are getting ready, so if folks could take their seats, but I'm gonna ask for people not to sit in the first row for this one because our camera person back there needs some good sight lines. So just the first row will keep open. But yes, Karina and Onyeka, you guys can sit in the first row. And so I will turn it over to E. Patrick.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is E. Patrick Johnson, and I am the Dean of the School of Communication and a faculty member in the Department of African American Studies. I am so thrilled to be here to celebrate 50 years of African American Studies and introduce our very exciting keynote speaker, an alumna that we both share. Like so many high-achieving Northwestern students, Ziwe double majored in African American Studies and radio, television, film. So if you don't mind, I'd like to reserve a few of the bragging rights for the School of Communication. We all know Ziwe as the consummate hyphenate, a do-it-all, comedian, writer, actress, and essayist. But it may surprise you to learn she was the exact same way at Northwestern. She started out as a math major, then discovered sociology, which led her to African American Studies, then to English, poetry, and eventually to radio, television, film, where she excelled in comedy writing. It's important to note that her path wasn't at all haphazard, but instead a calculated journey on which she explored her skills, ideas, passions, and plans. She learned how to apply the lessons she learned in poetry to her comedy writing, namely how both depend on the economy of words to be effective, as she once said. Her African American studies, no doubt, shaped her fearlessness in calling out racism and injustice. As for the math, well, she figured out how to do all of this in the same 24 hours we all get. One of her radio, television, film professors, Brett Nouveau, shared with me a few of his memories of Ziwe. He remembers her as dedicated, passionate, hilarious, and driven. He wrote, "I also remember her absolute focus and heavy curiosity, both of which show up again and again in her current work. It's amazing and wonderful," all caps. Ziwe once acknowledged some good advice she received from Professor Nouveau. Say yes to everything. Now, I wouldn't have given that advice, but that's the advice that she received, advice that he credits to Stephen Colbert. And Ziwe, in accepting all those writing jobs, signing on for myriad acting gigs, and eagerly diving into every opportunity she encountered, demonstrates what is possible when intelligence, humor, and grace meet enviable drive. And thank you, by the way, Ziwe, for saying yes to us. Please join me in welcoming first our discussants, Karina Carbo-Wright, a senior majoring in African American Studies and Sociology. Yes. And Onyeka Rise Chikbuku, a junior in Medill majoring in journalism. And without further ado, please give it up for the peerless, fearless, funny Ziwe Fumudoh.
I think she can see us, y'all.
Should I speak or? Okay, I'll just speak and then we'll do the Q&A afterwards. All my life I had to fight. Guys, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be back with Northwestern virtually. It feels like it was just yesterday that I was graduating from college. And it was just yesterday because I identify as 19 years old. Yes. So as you know, I did double major in African American Studies and art, radio, television, film, and I had a minor in poetry. And I can say that I stretched that degree within an inch of its life, and I'm using all of those little tasks in my professional day every single day. So it's a testament to the fact that you should always do what you love, and if you don't love it, don't do it. And you know, when I think about that advice that I got, which was to say yes to everything, heed my warning, learn from my mistakes, don't do that, don't say yes to everything. I've made some terrible things, but I've learned in the process who I am as an artist. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got coming up through Northwestern University was that you're really just trying to find what your inner child likes. And so it's like, when I was coming up as a writer, I would always try to adjust to be like what was hot. So I was writing at the Onion for a period of time, and so I would try to adjust my writing humor to be more like the Onion voice. And then I went on to write for Robin Thede and Jesus Marrow. And over the course of my career, I realized that I'm never going to be a good imitator of anyone else. All I can do is be the best version of myself, right? So when young people come up to me and they say, hey, I want to be just like you, I say, no, there's only one Ziwe. But you guys are individuals who have really unique perspectives and really unique skills, and the world needs your voice because it does not exist in the market that is entertainment or journalism or communications or business or whatever. Medicine, who's to say? Maybe you invent a little drug? I don't know what people do. But for me, you will never, I just really want to articulate that you will never, I cannot teach you how to recreate the hellscape that is coming out after Barack Obama had won that little second election into what I would describe as, a tumultuous time in American history that we're still living through every day, randomly. And so, who's to say what the future holds, but what I know for sure is that you guys have all the capabilities that you need to succeed. And that really comes down to the fact that you have a really, really good community. I'm really lucky because I know that all the boats rise with the tide, right? There is, ragged individualism does not exist. You're in an ecosystem, you will see the same people over and over again. Case in point, Mr. Chester Marlon Hanks, a fellow communications major, who I saw on my television show. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? But we are going to run into each other for the rest of our professional careers, and it's important that you nurture your community and not just think of it as brash networking and get in the emails and get in the cell phones and texting the people to be at the cafe shops. Is caffeine still there? I don't know what people mean. But it's about okay, how can we create things together? Find the people whose work you value, who elevate your work, and be in common with them over the course of your lifetime, and you will find that you will elevate each other's art to something that is beyond comprehension. And that reminds me of another quote. I know why the caged birds sing. If you guys are thinking, who could have said that random quote? It's a little poet I like to call Maya Angelou. And she had some points. The caged bird sings because the caged bird has a... I don't even know what I'm saying. But you know what? I'll tell you this. The value of having an African American Studies degree, I honestly am so thankful. Firstly, congratulations to the 50-year anniversary. Northwestern University, and I use my African American Studies degree every single day of my life. And that, who knew? I knew, and I will say my professor. And she will say that I was a good student, but I really wasn't. No, I got good grades, but I had ADD. It was undiagnosed. And what I really appreciated about that experience studying African American Studies at Northwestern is it really opened my eyes and allowed me to create this show that I have on Showtime where I get to interact and investigate racial hierarchies in America. I would not be able to do that if I had not taken AFAM 101, AFAM 201, AFAM 301, and so forth. I took the social meaning of race, and I remember that class really depressed me. I became stronger. And so as you guys read about, the multitudes of racial injustices that have existed since our country's founding, know that you could turn that into a television show. Would you guys call this accessible advice? What's interesting is actually the reason why I started studying African American studies is because I would describe myself as, so whenever I would get assignments for AFAM, I would just I would digest it so quickly. And so I had a natural gravitational pull to this art and to this work and to these histories and books. And so I followed that passion. And that's how I got to where I am today, because I always was following what was really at my core and at my center, the person I was. And so again, just to reiterate my opening statements, which is you're only going to be the best version of yourself. You cannot be the best version of me. I cannot be the best version of Oprah. What you can do is be you. And that's why you're watching Disney Channel. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more. This is called vamping. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about my extracurricular skills at Northwestern. I famously was rejected from all the clubs. I don't want to flex, but I was rejected from ODB. I also was rejected from Meow, I think it was called, which is the improv. So don't let the little word no be an invitation for you not to do things unless it's like a crime. Then don't, no means no, unless it's about empowering your career. So just, it's like a case-by-case basis, use common sense. But where I was 21 years old, not getting into these clubs, I wasn't on the Northwestern comedy paper. I think it was called Sherman Ave. Is that still around? Yeah. I would get rejected and think, wow, oh my gosh, my career is doomed. I'm not going to be successful. But I did not take no for an answer. And I just, I went into my little room on, I lived on Sherman and what's that really, really far street where the really, really far one where the bus goes all the way through? Oh God, Davis? Sherman and Davis, we'll say? I don't think those are cross streets.
I think they
I think they are, right? I think I looked at Sherman and Davis. Anyone get the long form tax returns? I didn't let rejection get in the way of me pursuing my dreams, and so I would work, typing on my computer every day, and I would write really, really bad things for a really long time. And I just wanted to emphasize how bad my writing was. And I probably shouldn't have gotten into those clubs because I was not great. But with time, you start to hone your craft. And bad turns into slightly good. And then slightly good turns into medium, mid, and then mid turns into fantastic. But it's about the tenacity, and dare I say, the audacity of hope. I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. And I got there by, traveling from Sherman and Davis to Kresge, 20 miles in the snow every day. And it was chaotic, but it was all part of my journey. And that's how I became the woman that I am today, through sheer will and not being able to read social cues that tell me that I'm bad at things. Great. Would you guys like to hear more speech? I could go on forever.
So who can she hear? Okay. And can she see me? Hi, Ziwe. It's Mary Patillo. I'm good. How are you?
I'm living my best life on a computer.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I hope when you get that close, you can see us better.
That's exactly how screens work.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite up Karina and Onyeka, and when they sit down, hopefully you can see them, so you'll have a little bit better visual cue and feel more in community with us. And then they're going to be in conversation with you for a little bit, and then we'll open it up to the audience. We also have somebody looking at the streaming, so if there are questions on stream, I know y'all are chatting it up on stream, because I have seen that, but if there are questions that come up on stream, we will get those going as well. But for now, I'll turn it over to Karina and Onyeka. Can you see them now?
Yes, I can see these brilliant African American studies double majors, one in Medill, one in sociology. Wow, you're mine.
Wow, thank you so much. Well, not much has changed, I'll be honest. There's not many black people in comedy clubs right now either. So, we're still there. So we have a couple questions submitted from students, and then a couple other questions, and then we'll take some from the audience, like Professor Patillo said. But the first question is from Alex Turntine, and she asks, what was it like working on The Rundown with Robin Thede, another Northwestern alumnus?
Oh my gosh, that was my first ever TV writing job. It was in 2015 or so great, because if we're speaking about community, I really cannot emphasize that the access that you guys have at Northwestern, one to really cool tech, right? Like you can rent a camera that costs $18,000 at the local whatever tech room AV club for $50 or for free, right? You have really good access to really good technology, but more importantly, you have really great access to some of the people that are going to be running the entertainment industry, running media, running some of the biggest corporations in the country, if not the world, right? And connect with these people, because I am influenced. Serena Walker, I can see her little square. So Serena Walker and I, she is Mary Patillo's mentee. We were in college at the same time. We were in a lot of the same classes. And so I was so influenced by her as a student, and she encouraged me to be so curious and learn so much. So community was really important as a student, and it was also really important as my first job at the Rundown with Robin Thede. I got to work with Janelle James, who is the star of Abbott Elementary. I got to work with Alex English, who is a writer on Saturday Night Live. The man who runs my company, the showrunner of my television show, Hunter's Beast, was an assistant on that show. And so I'm a first-time staff writer. He's an assistant, and we bond, and we've been creating music videos together and shooting web series beta. And then now he's running my television show, running my company. So boats rise with the tide. Connect with the people who are on your level. Don't look ahead, look right next door to you, and you will find the hitters that you need to be an assassin. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Amazing, thank you.
As a second question, this is from Ziwe. She asks, what do you think the fashion choices and production design in your show, Ziwe, contributes to the overall effect of the show?
Okay, so back to community. Hannah Shepard, who is the costume designer for my television show, guess where I met her at the Rundown with Robin Thede. So again, community. Ahana means family. This is the best. Please listen to me, please. And so how is it influenced? Basically what happens with my costumes is I have a really stupid idea. I'll go to Pam and I say, I want to look like the girl from Impossible. I want to look like the stepsister from Cinderella. And she takes that gibberish and turns it into a full aesthetic. And then from that show comes a really, really strong visual language. So you're able to identify my clips when they go viral. You're able to look at a series of outfits and see, oh, that would be something that Ziwe wears. It just is about building the language of the show. So it contributes to the satire, which is Ziwe is the character that is hyper feminine. She's a media coastal elite. and she's in contrast with the late night masculinity. And so that costume design really adds to that element. It's like visual language to the creative that we write.
Awesome, thank you.
Answer your question? Or maybe not. It might not.
I think so. Okay, the next question I'm gonna ask is, how do you decide what questions to ask your guests? And do guests ever veto questions that you want to ask?
How do I decide what questions to ask my guests? I do a lot of research. Shout out to Medill. I wrote for the Daily Northwestern for 1 week, and I was like, this sucks. I don't get to talk about myself. It's hell. And so I quit immediately. But that week taught me a lot about being an effective journalist. And so really, I listened to like when I was interviewing like Fred Leibowitz, right, or Charlemagne the God. Those are two like kind of firebrand people who've been in American media for the last 20, 25 years. They've done every quote, they've done every show. So it's like, how do we find something fresh? And so when you're asking me what questions do I look to ask my respective guests, I'm looking to have conversations that you haven't seen them have before. I'm looking to have conversations that don't exist in American media. So I'm really just trying to find a new lane and have something that's substantive and fun. And if you're asking like, how do guests ever veto? Honestly, it's a vibe check. You'll find that like you have to have like emotional intelligence to be a journalist. And again, I was a journalist for 1 week. But what I learned that week is that you have to be able to like listen actively and hear when the person's uncomfortable, hear when they're comfortable, hear when there's more to their answer, and you just have to be quiet and let them like unveil. And so it's really about vibe checking, but I haven't had that issue, honestly. But I'm careful not to ask people like, hey, have you committed a crime recently that you'd like to go on record? That's not the type of journalist comedian I am, but I think there's room at the table for that.
Speaking of your guests, do you think you have like a favorite guest that you've gotten to spend time with on your show?
No, I mean, people ask me this all the time, but how can you compare Andrew Yang to Chet Hanks, to Phoebe Bridgers, to Charlotte the God, to Hannibal Buress, to Alana Glazer? How do you compare these? People are not in the same lane. What I appreciate about our show is that I talk to people who interest me. So it's Mia Khalifa, or it's Emrata, or it's Katja Zablachkova. And it's a wide range of people. So I don't have a favorite. Every interview is a different audience, and it's a different interest of mine. Do you have a favorite child, guys?
Oh my gosh. So the next question is, how did you come up with the idea for your show? And what would you want the impact of your show to be?
Years of trauma led me to. I'm sure many of you guys can relate. I mean, you go to Northwestern University. I don't have to tell y'all about how things work. And what is so beautiful about an institution that I love and support and hope my children can get into is the conversations that you have with people who are from different walks of life. And so at Northwestern University, I went to boarding school before this. I'm born and raised in Massachusetts. I, as a Black woman, have found myself in conversations that have made me say, why would you ask me that? And so I take those personal experiences, again, the art is never too far from the personal. And I use that as inspiration to have an interview show in which I'm confronting race. But it's all inspired by real life conversations where I'm like working at a job and I'm the only Black employee, and someone corners me to tell me about their Black friend. And I'm like, hey man, we're at a Wendy's. And that's not unique to me. I'm just the one who's profiting off it. But every single person in that room, I can see your little 4C curls. I know you have a story about being confronted by someone you didn't want to talk to. And you thought, wow, I wish someone could see this interaction, because it is, quote, iconic. And that's really the inspiration for my show, is having those experiences and not having any way to synthesize those experiences, and then spending 4 years in African American studies and suddenly thinking, wow, I guess we're not in a post-racial America. Uh-oh. Having like the verbiage to realize that, like, okay, all of these experiences that I'm having are collective, right? And there's a word for these. And microaggressions, suddenly, like, I was slightly older than the Tumblr generation, but when I caught wind of that, man, intersectionality, I was using those words, like I was throwing them around. And so I took the education I had at Northwestern and understanding of like Black American history and Black American experiences, and I applied that to what I would describe as Black trauma, and I created a comedy show to heal myself. And what do I hope that my work does? I hope that my work, first and foremost, makes people laugh, and I hope that in that comedy, in that humor, that we are able to heal ourselves, at least, right? I cannot control how people react to the respective guests. Some are polarizing. Charlemagne the God is a different interview than Nicole Byer. And so there's a little bit of something for everyone, but I hope that people who are watching my show can find an interview that they can latch onto and use it to create, use it to go back into their communities and defend themselves, use it to do whatever they want to do with my work. But first and foremost, I want them to laugh.
Thanks so much. As someone who was heinously microaggressed on Wednesday, I want to ask you,
What happened?
I was at work, which I just work in a building on campus. I was just walking around, going to the restroom, and a man asked me, "Can I help you?" I said, I work upstairs, so no. But what's your favorite microaggression story from Northwestern University?
Well, first, before I even go into that, I love that the audience went, African American Studies panel. Okay, what is my favorite, or what is my most appreciated? The thing about trauma is you sort of black it out. Oh, okay. So the reason why I started college as a math major, and I was determined to like work as a banker and like make money. Like I'm gonna go into debt. I'm gonna make money. And so I was like, I had a really good education, right? I went to boarding school before Northwestern, and so we do like these group projects in my math class, and my like co-conspirators, like my peers, would always second guess my answers that were always right. And that was when I really quickly realized, like, oh, I cannot do a lifetime of like people undermining me because they see my complexion, they see my phenotypes and think this person can't act. And so I decided, hard pivot, I'm going to go into the arts and sciences, heavy on the arts, and do something where I will be celebrated for my differences. But shout out to all of y'all in math. That's cool. We need more Black mathematicians. I support Black people in STEM. Yes. But the way you're clapping, I know that someone has come out of pocket talking about acute angles, obtuse angles, and you're like, what are you talking about? I feel you.
Amazing, thank you. As someone who has also experienced Black trauma and decided to write a senior thesis about it, which was additional trauma, where is the craziest place you've cried on Northwestern's campus?
Oh, that's a good question. As a Nigerian American, I'm not really one for tears. Why feel? I repress things. I remember, and I think it was my the summer. It was spring of my junior year, and I was like, dog, I do not have an internship. Like, am I going to be unemployed? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm panicked. Everyone, like, consultants get employed, like, when they're born. I've had a job for 18 years, and I don't have an internship, you know? And I remember just walking like sullenly around the Lakeville and like almost being murdered by geese. This, I hate everything. Like what I wasted like my Northwestern degree on poetry. What was I thinking? And then as I was, and it's so dramatic because as I was like walking like Charlie Brown, like Christmas, like, honestly, I get an email that's like, congratulations, you've been chosen for the Onion internship. And I was like, oh, nice. And was it unpaid? Yes. But that's not the point of the story. The point is, nevertheless, she persisted. And sometimes when you think you're down, you're actually up. And so you don't, and I also had gotten rejected from like, I think it was like a Sumner fellowship or like a fellowship, and I was so depressed. But sometimes rejections, when one door closes, another door opens. You don't even know what like, I don't know if you guys believe in spirits or ancestors or whatever, or like, I don't know, what like non-denominational ghosts. But like sometimes the universe is leading you through a path, and you're thinking, wow, like I'm such a failure, I didn't get X, Y, and Z, and you're holding out for something bigger and better that is more attuned to your skills, your interests, and what you want to do, that you didn't even know you wanted to do, right? So that is an inspirational bookend of my trauma. I feel like I'm at like a mega fest. You guys are just like nodding. Get ready. No, titty chicks? Okay.
Also, as a Nigerian American, did you ever see yourself, in your high school self, did you ever see yourself where you are now?
No, because the position I am, yes and no, right? Like I am a very determined individual, so I knew hell or high water, I am going to get what I want. That's just the person I am. And I think you guys should start saying that to yourselves. I get what I want, and it might not be today or tomorrow, but I will beat down the universe until I get what I want. And pay me what you owe, you know? But also, like, I created a lane for myself that did not exist when I was in high school. When I was 14 years old, there was no such thing as like a viral internet sensation that sells a show off. Instagram didn't exist when I was in high school. So all of these things, like everything about my career is organic, right? I'm just vibing. Like part of the tenacity of Northwestern students, myself included, is that we have a plan and we know exactly what we need to do to hit all these beats. And it's like, just let go, right? And trust that you cannot control everything as someone who is I'm a controlling person. And so over time, I just vibed with the universe and was like, okay, like, I'm going to be persistent. I'm not getting, like, the things that I want when I'm auditioning for, like, these clubs at Northwestern. What if I just start, like, writing privately? Okay, like, I get this little internship that's unpaid. Hell. But what if I also start, like, improvising? Oh, man, improvising, is it fun? I would not say it is. Okay, now I have the tool set, and I can, like, go and, like, start, like, tweeting and, like, making, like, TikToks and, like working with peers, like, okay, these are a couple people I like, let's start creating together. And then over the course of 10 years to become an overnight success, but by the way, it took 10 years, I figured out the exact niche job description that did not exist when I was a kid.
I think we have a question on Zoom. Okay, Ziwe, can you see me? Okay, I don't know if she, it's Serena, Ziwe.
Hi, Serena.
Hey, okay, so.
Black square.
Oh, okay. Oh, from my computer. Okay. Okay, so I was gonna skip this question, but I feel like I would ask the question if it weren't my friend, so I'm just gonna ask it anyways. Someone asked, why have you let men who are known for abusing and exploiting Black women, like Charlemagne the God and Chet Hanks, onto your show? What does it mean to give these men a platform? And then a related question is, how do your interviews differ when you're interviewing Black people and Black women versus non-Black people?
I think to the first question, which is, say that again.
The first question is why.
I'll start with the second question.
Oh.
Sorry.
You go, Ziwe.
First question first, and then ask me the second question second.
Wait, you wanted to hear the first question again?
Yes, so I
Okay.
can answer it.
Okay. The first question is basically, what does it mean to platform problematic people? Like, people are saying, like, you're platforming problematic people like Charlemagne the God, Chet Hanks. What does that mean to give them a platform? Or, like, are they already platform? Or are you just, like, what does it mean to interview them on your show?
I think that's something that you have to answer as an individual, right? Everyone is going to take something differently from the Charlemagne interview. And I can attest to that because I've read my comments. Some people are like, you hate black men! Other people are like, vindicated, finally someone says it. Other people are like, how dare you give this man an opportunity to talk? From my perspective, I think that this man has been in American media for the last 20 to 25 years. I think he has a platform that supersedes mine 15-fold. The Breakfast Club has maybe 4.5 million listeners. So I think that, but I am not like the moral compass of any community. I speak as an individual. And you have to intake my art and say, I hate this. Or you intake it and say, I love this. Or you intake it and say, I have no feelings on this. But the thing about art is that radical art moves you negatively or positively. And I cannot control how you're moved. But I think the point is, we're talking about something, and it might be a really, really big fumble on my part. Who's to say? Time will tell. But you have to have that expression and understanding yourself. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Good answer. Okay, so the second one is, how do your interviews differ when you're interviewing Black people and Black women versus non-Black people? And then there are a bunch of questions. People want to know who your favorite AFAM class/professor was. So answer that as you see fit.
Great. Okay, so again, you're asking questions that don't relate to each other. They're very distinctly different. The second question was, how do I interview Black people differently? So it's not actually like, okay, this is a Black guest, so this is what I'm going to do. This is a white guest, so this is what I'm going to do. This is an Asian guest. It's more so like, who am I interviewing? I'm going to research this person. And part of researching is understanding that this person moves through the world as a Black woman like Nicole Byer, or as a Black man like Charlemagne or Hannibal Buress, or as a white kid like Chet Hanks, and that has a very famous fancy dad, right? So, but you have to interrogate that with each respective guest, and then the questions, they come from that place. But I think if you're looking like Ebony K. Williams, Rachel Lindsay, and Nicole Byer, those are the three Black women I've interviewed. I think that's, and then like my writer Michelle Davis. Those are some of my favorite interviews because I find them to be so lighthearted. Like I really don't hold them to the fire. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, cool, never mind. All right, move on. And so there's something really interesting to me. If this is a satire about American media and this character is a host, then suddenly it's like, oh, do hosts have biases? Of course they do, right? I mean, this isn't even a news show, and I'm held to a standard that is not held to by our American congressman. But that's what I think is really compelling, right? Because this is a satire, so we're supposed to leave with a critique, right? So back to your point about like, oh, does the show interview Black women differently? Perhaps. I'm a Black woman, maybe I have a bias. I think that you have to read that in the text. One of my favorite jokes that we do in episode 1, season 1 was with Fran Lebowitz. And I remember this happening in person, where interviewing each other, talking about Barack Obama, and I could feel myself disassociating. And then I had to snap myself back into it and say, Ziwe, stop disassociating. And I love that, having that reaction, because it's like, oh, why did I have such a knee-jerk reaction to Fran Lebowitz talking about the first Black president? Okay, how can we interrogate that reaction? Well, we're going to literally bleep her on the show, right? And so people on Twitter, they go crazy. They're like, this is censorship. It's like, you can find her quotes about Obama. She says the same thing. But it's more interesting to me to show like, okay, hey, does liberal media also have a bias? Who is media for? Who is it serving to protect? Who is it empowering? Who is it financially benefiting? Who are the corporate entities behind this, right? So I think that, again, it's like an examination. Do I interview people differently? Yeah, I think that the character definitely does, but that's part of the bias, right? Of media. is there such thing as a non-biased journalist? I think we're taught at Medill, you have to be objective. Honey, have you read a newspaper? I mean, I stand the First Amendment, don't get me wrong, but you open a newspaper in any of the biggest publications, you will find racial bias, you will find class bias, you will find gender bias. So to sit back and say, as liberals, we would never, that is audacious. The premise of that I find baffling. And so for my character, and talking about platforms, I mean, if you read a newspaper, platforms, majority of our newspapers are, 75% of American newspapers are owned by billionaires. That's wild, right? That's wild. So we have to be critical of our news. So if you leave my interview show, which is, by the way, a comedy show, it's not even journalism, it's like cosplay. But if you leave it being critical of me, then by extension, you should be critical of the things that you are ingesting without question, that is being told to you as the objective truth. When we know beyond shadow of the doubt that the method is nothing sometimes, allegedly. Wow, did I inspire a room full of like journalists?
No, it was just giving robot for a second.
I was doing like a robot.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. I'll just ask the final question that was said by Serena, which was, what was your favorite AFAM class and or professor at Northwestern?
Obviously, it was Mary Patillo's class. What was the class we were in together? Serena, that for our senior year.
I think it's like AFAM 215, Black Political Social Life, something like that.
Oh yeah, I love that class where we talked about like, it was symbolic representation. That's what we talked about. We like learned about symbolic representation versus like practical representation, right? And like having these masked figureheads being like, it's okay, racism is over. And then obviously like when you look at like the cross section of people and how they're affected by like symbolic representation, it's like, okay, well the needle really hasn't moved. So I think that class by Mary Patillo was a big inspiration for my class, for my show, because this woman represents to me like symbolic representation, right? Like she's like, because I have broken out in the world, Black people have, racism does no longer exist, and I'm going to be the champion. And it's like, well, what are her interests? Where do they lie? Who is she fighting for? And so it's again like about satire and examining what we're consuming and what we're told to believe.
Yeah. Do you want to ask him? Do you have one? Otherwise, we can close out.
Can you? Okay, you're stepping up. I don't know if I have a last question. What is? I would say. Sorry, what'd you say?
I said I think we have 15 more minutes. Do we open it up to questions from the audience afterwards?
No, I think we stop at 5:45. So I think we're.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Take your time. I'm happy to talk to the youth of America.
Do you have a question? Okay, wait, we have one last question. Go ahead.
We do?
Sure.
Oh, I thought you had a question.
It's not on?
Swipe it up.
Hello. I'm being told to come up with a question very quickly. No, I was just saying I'll just talk then. I really love you and your show, and this is just an awesome time. This is just incredible for me personally. And I live tweeted the whole thing. This is just awesome. Thank you so much. I did live tweet the whole thing. I might tag you in 2 of them. Really great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, we are going to wrap up here and move to our final session. Ziwe, I wish I could see. Wait, hold on. Now she can see me. Hi, Ziwe. So I just wanted to be sure I could see you when I said goodbye, but it has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for saying yes, for joining us. We know your season just dropped, so all of y'all watch Ziwe. Ziwe is completely crazy doing all the season stuff, as Tara is with the drop of her book. So we just got Black excellence all up in the room, and thank you so very much. We are not going to take a break, but instead, Professor Marquise Bey is going to bring us on home in these last 15 minutes, and I will turn it over to him. Thanks again, Karina and Onyeka, for a wonderful facilitation. And I'll turn it over to Professor Bey.
Okay. I've been told I'm quite soft-spoken, so I need to get real close to the mic. Okay. This has been wonderful. It really, really has been. I'm so happy to be here. Even with my introverted self, I'm really excited to be around so many wonderful, wonderful people. Okay. So, good early evening, everyone. This has been a wonderfully electrifying celebration. It truly has been. I'm Dr. Marquise Bey, an assistant professor of AFAM, among other departments and programs, and I've been given a marvelous task to close this portion of the day. But before that, I want to take some time to give a hearty thanks and shout out to the people and places that cultivated the possibility for this event to be as phenomenal as it has been. So I'd like to, on behalf of the entire AFAM team, thank all the panelists and moderators from today, current students and former students who all did an amazing job. A thank you to Ziwe for the wonderful remarks, to Weinberg College for all the support, all the donors who in part made portions of this event possible, the incredible, incredible efforts of the 50th Planning Committee, our chair, Mary Patillo, and our awesome departmental coordinators, Suzette and Tyla, Mary Green Productions, and the Block Museum. So let's give a warm round of applause to all of them. So now on to my marvelous task, and I'll be brief too. I've been gifted the opportunity to send us off with some thoughts. Today has been a celebration of the 50th year of African American Studies at Northwestern, and we have learned a tremendous amount, have reminisced and paid homage. I am now here to share some thoughts on the next 50 years of AFAM at Northwestern. Of course, I cannot say with absolute certainty that AFAM in the next 50 years will look like this or that, and that's not my aim, to deliver to us all a template for what each year will look like exactly. What I am offering is a brief, joyful speculation, we might say, all coming from my musings and thoughts and conversations, coming from someone who might actually still be here when the next 50th rolls around, if I am lucky. Perhaps one thing I anticipate in the next 50 years for AFAM is a shift characterized by a steadfast insistence on livable conditions for Black people. To be sure, we are already living amidst that insistence, living amidst glorious calls for reconfiguring care work, abolishing police and prisons, sustaining the environment, proliferating access to food and education and shelter, among numerous other endeavors that try to bring about in no uncertain terms our life and livability. That will intensify, I hope, on myriad scales of the local, the national and extra-national, the global, the world, or further still, if you prefer, the earthly. This insistence will be one that is robust, rigorous, radical, as the tradition and lineage from which our work stems has long taught. And this insistence will be to the liberation of all, because we absolutely know, that when questing for freedom from this angle, an angle of a darker hue, an angle of a certain political leaning, an angle from a certain incisive awareness of the things that brought us here, with a clear understanding of what and where here is, when questing for freedom from this, it is a quest for freedom properly understood. With the next 50 years, what else might arise is an expansion of our reach. Perhaps it will be, as I believe it will and must be, a loving expansion, an invitational expansion, not a casting of a net that imposes, but instead an invitational hug. AFAM will forge friends and homies and other university departments, if it will still be called such. Outside of the academy and across the globe, a beloved community, yes, but more, a rigorously loving, struggling, living, moving coalition. And perhaps still, in the next 50 years of this department, this field of study and living and struggle, we will find that it must move to a different beat. Battles will be fought and won, as they long have been. New challenges will arise that demand pivoting, or new language, or new tactics. People will get tired and step aside for others to offer their skills. And two, we will imagine new things we need and want. That might be what excites me most. What will we imagine next? What mode of being together in ebullient joy, yet at the same time committed agitation, will we think up next? What kinds of communities and systems and worlds will we dream and envision? What riotously affirming and celebratory event will be planned on the occasion of 100 years of AFAM at Northwestern? Unfortunately, or maybe not, I am not someone who is given to providing concrete answers or templates for these kinds of questions. I am someone who finds refuge in imagining, in dreaming and speculating and wondering. And with all of you, I hope that is okay. Because if the forever, eternally great Toni Morrison has said that if you can imagine it, you can have it, what is it that AFAM in the past 50 years and the next wishes to have? And I sit in awe, thinking simply, imagine that. My goodness, y'all, imagine that. Happy 50th anniversary, everyone. So some very quick logistic. The party does not start here. Ooh, I don't know what's happening here. We good? Okay, we're good now. So the party does not stop here. So we have an after party of sorts right after that begins at 6 in Norris Hall, or the Norris Center. So if you go right out the front of this building, make a left, walk for about 45 seconds, you'll be in Norris. And it's on the second floor in the Lewis room, I believe it's called. And that begins at 6. There will be food, dancing, drinks, awards as well. So we will see you all over there in about 15 minutes, or in about 10 minutes actually. So thank you so much.